This is on, and I'm coming to you with this month's video, looking at world events. And as much as I don't like being involved in politics, honestly, and some of these things, I do think it's important for us to understand the energetic currents. And so I like people to understand, and I have several people who enjoy understanding how the energetic currents are connecting with world events and things that are happening in our world. And I think the interesting thing when we get into the energy patterns is energy patterns don't choose sides. You know, people's actions and behaviors determine things. And when we look at the energy patterns, and if we're really willing to look at situations honestly and openly and humbly and all of those types of things, then we really can start to see who is playing things out, and to see our way through some of the illusions of what is reported, because almost everything is slanted one way or another. We realize this, and it's very hard to get totally, fully, truly objective information that shares both sides of the story and looks at the hardcore realities, including the pieces we don't want to face. And I think this is hard in these times because with everything that's coming out in our world, everything that is happening, it can be very, very hard to really look at things from that objective point of view, especially when the people that we have put on a pedestal are not that great, and we find out that they've done things that um, are not very nice things. And this is a hard time for a lot of people because a lot of people are not wanting to let go of their illusions around people and things, because they're still just so stuck in the narratives. But hopefully, with the work I do, it helps us to get a little bit of foresight of what's coming, what to be prepared for, to realize, okay, these types of things are playing out, so I shouldn't get too wrapped up in things, or I need to pay extra attention to certain things. And that's the cool thing with the energy patterns, is that it helps us to kind of keep our heads together a little bit, stay focused a little bit, stay a little more grounded, if we want to say that, and to know where to keep our attention. And I think you'll find that when you are looking at things more objectively, then you can start to see a lot more clearer perspective on things. You can get a lot closer to the truth, when you're just not swept up in all of the emotions that are being tugged around by whatever is playing out. And, you know, so much of that we have to realize there's so much that is happening beneath the surface that we don't hear about and that we don't see as well. So this kind of gives us a better clue to some of those undercurrents that's going on. So this month, we're really taking a look at um, whether we've learned from our past, what's happened in the past, where are the connections that are happening between what has happened in the past, what's going on today, how that impacts us, how that's influencing our choices, and realizing that our choices have a lot of power. And the things that are playing out right now, the choices that are being made right now, are really determining our future. They're not just choices like, should we start a program or not start a program, or give money here or give money there. I mean, the choices being made are truly serious ones that are determining our future direction. So it is a big time on one hand. On another hand, I think we're going to see some people frustrated. So if you don't know my work, what I do is I put this out. I'm an author, and I put this out. It's a daily guide for life on Earth, and that's the Code Journey. This is the 2026 edition. You can find this, by the way, on my website, compassioncodes.com. I've got the direct links there to get you right to purchase pages if that's something you're interested in. But this is a great book. It gives us an idea of the different currents that are happening, not just in our world, but also how to deal with things on a personal level in our own lives. It's got insights on the year and the months and the days. And this isn't really a productive tool. I just have a gift for being able to read the energy currents and what's going on. And through doing that, it helps us to make wiser choices. It helps us um, to look at things with a clearer mind a lot of times. And what's so interesting is I have friends that are on both sides of the political fence, some that are extremists on both sides of the political fence, some of them are a little more neutral ground. And it's always interesting to me how the same piece of information, they take it and apply it to theirs and see it the way they want. And again, we have to be very careful of that. We need to come into neutral because, again, so many times we're trying to see things the way that fits the way we want them to be versus the way they are. And it takes practice. It takes practice to realize these different things because most people are taking things for face value or they're reading too much into them, either way. And I think at some point we do have to come back into this little neutral ground because we don't want all this division going on and we don't want so much chaos going on, especially when we have these big choices that have to be made. And this is a big thing. And I think that sometimes too, when we're looking at these choice pieces, which is happening a lot in March, it's almost like children and parents. You know, children want what children want. And parents sometimes have to make those tough decisions, and they know the child isn't necessarily going to be happy over those decisions, but they know it's going to keep that child safe. They know it's going to be for their well-being. They know that, that it's going to give that child a chance at a future as opposed to, putting them through all kinds of other misery that the child doesn't want to look at or see. The child tends to follow those things that look good, but they don't oftentimes look at what they really are. They just want to do what everybody else is doing. And again, I see that on both sides of the fence too, where people are just following whatever everybody else is doing. They're just regurgitating all the same information. So let's get on with what we have going on coming up here in March and what I've got for insights on that. March is a month that has a lot of past things resurfacing. So we're kind of in some ways revisiting history, where, what was presented, conflicts with reality, and poor choices that were made. So this is kind of like we're having to deal with some of the consequences of poor choices. And every administration wants to blame the previous administration or the other administrations there. I see that no matter who's in office, no matter who's running things, they're almost all always blaming somebody else along the way. But we're at a point now that we're having to deal with things that are past choices. No matter who made them, we're dealing with things of past choices. And the question is, what are we going to deal with that now? This is a month that we can definitely be presented with some conflicts, whether that's conflicts of interest, conflicts of how to proceed, conflicts of ideas, but more so conflicts with reality itself. So our illusions conflicting with the reality of the situation, our opinions, our desires conflicting with what we need to do. So there's some conflict in there around the past. And the question is, can we learn from this past? Can we learn from what was done before? History keeps repeating itself. Time keeps repeating itself. So we go through these different phases. And there may be many people who are trying to do the same things that are trying to be implemented now, and they may not have been successful. So the question is, are we just going to repeat what somebody else did, or are we going to learn from where it didn't work for them and then take the steps to make it work now? These are always the big questions. So a lot of past stuff coming back. And this can play in other ways too, like choices that people made. Look at all the Epstein stuff that's coming out these days, right? And there's a lot. It's almost overwhelming people's heads. And I'm thinking this is just a small piece. This is just a small piece of things. And we're barely scratched the surface on this stuff. And yet people are really having issues. I mean, they saw Deepak Chopra's names. I've been for a while, right? A couple of years, those who've been following me, they're like, why do you keep calling out Deepak Chopra and Marianne Williamson and some of these other people? And I'm like, because, because there's something there. And now it's finally starting to come out, and people are like, wow, this really blows my illusions. And this is part of the conflict too. We hold these people in illusions in this grandeur space, this exalted, looked up to space because they went big scale. Well, almost anytime you go big scale, you're selling yourself out and you're selling into corruption in a lot of ways. Very few people can uphold integrity or come back into integrity when they've sold out to get that big name. And so we have these illusions that are breaking, and we've been going through a lot of illusion breakings, but this is again a conflict with reality. The image that's presented is not the reality of who the person is, for example. So that's kind of an interesting component. We have to be looking at the facts. So we must do this to avoid unfavorable paths. We may not like the facts. It may not support what we want to believe, but we need to look at the facts and accept those facts and to deal with those facts. Because if we don't look at them, we're never going to create that favorable path forward. This is part of the work that has to be done right now. We need to learn from the past what does and does not work. Again, we repeat a lot of cycles in history. We go through these different points in history. This is not the first time that AI has been massively predominant in a culture in history. And so we need to go back to those times where what happened when AI became too big, too powerful, whatever you want to say. What happened in those times? Why did it collapse societies? What happened to people during those times? How did that impact the earth? How did it do these different things? These are the things we need to be looking at before we just go wild crazy with AI. That being said, we also have to consider what we need to do to stay alive and not be taken over by those people who are working with it. Excuse me. Guess my throat just drying up a little bit in there all of a sudden. We need to be drawing on the wisdom of others again and go with sound, practical advice. This gets complicated for people because people have been so programmed to respect, to follow, to praise credentials, okay, certifications, endorsements by big networks. But if we really get into those deeper layers, those endorsements oftentimes don't mean anything. Doesn't mean that anybody did something practical. It doesn't mean that they have real world experience. There's a lot of people who are just handed certificates or titles or things like that, and they are not really that. It can be very misleading. Take a doctor credential, okay? Dr. Tedros is an example of that. He doesn't truly have a medical background, but everybody has him in charge of health. Why? Here again, we're taking, this advice. We don't really have, we've been taught to listen to these so-called experts who don't have any real experience or knowledge in what they're doing. They've just been put in a position because they're willing to follow orders, basically. Um, And so we have to sort through that. And just because, like, I see a lot of times, even on the big spiritual people, a lot of them, it's like, well, backed by this network or NBC or CBS affiliated or Forbes based or, this or that. Again, so much of this stuff is just bought and paid for. And people are told to be supported if they're following the corruption or in certain networks of people. So now when I look at those things, almost those things are like a total turn off to me. Like I look at those and I go, okay, so this person has said the right things, they've sold out somewhere, and they probably don't have any real world life experience. They just know how to market themselves really well. And they've played the games to get the big name and get the support. That's my experience. So I'm actually very turned off when I go onto somebody's web page now and it says, endorsed by Forbes and endorsed by this and, means nothing. It really means nothing when you get down to it. We want to get down to who's giving us sound, practical advice. Who is actually looking, again, at the facts of something? Who is coming into things and saying, here's how the body actually functions. Here's how the equipment actually works. Okay? Versus, here's how I'm going to tell you it's going to work. And this is where people have gotten lost on a lot of narratives, like environmental narratives, for example, or even health narratives. And they've been sold things because it's been about profit. It's been about a product that somebody wants to push or something that, something somebody wants to make money off of it. It's not necessarily the way things work. So sometimes we need to get in and say, who has actual experience with this? Who's taken a journey with this? Who has done their own research with this? And how has it been a part of their life? And what is the studies and the research that they've done? How did they come to those conclusions? And we get away from that because we get so used to just looking for those quick fixes and the easy way out. Just give me a pill, just give me a vitamin, just whatever, tell me what to do, instead of actually understanding how we work. And if we actually start to understand more like how our bodies work, how things function in the world, how the natural processes are, then we can actually start to get into some of these facts and the truth and get down to the sound, practical advice that makes sense. Now, this isn't going to profit some people. There's no doubt about that because sound, practical advice that is going to lead to real results oftentimes is very simple, very easy, and doesn't cost things. It's just nature. It doesn't cost a lot to do them. And people have been programmed that it's almost too easy, so they shouldn't follow nature. But nature is how we were created. That's part of divine creation. So when we look at that, we should be following nature's ways. We should be following the natural ways that things function instead of all of these other forced ideas on there. So looking at that's going to be very important. Now, in the monthly energy from the 1st through the 20th, that choice energy becomes very magnified. So those first 3 weeks of the month, choices are really, really critical. And this is determining our future. So a lot of the choices that are going to be made, we really want to pay attention to them in this first 3 weeks because they are going to be the choices that have a big impact on our future, what direction things go in the world. This is a very powerful time, so hopefully there will be some very wise choices made during this time. We're going to have to watch, we're going to have to pay attention, we're going to have to see what is being decided on and what is being chosen, and that's going to tell us a lot about what direction we're headed. Old things in karma have to be cleared before moving forward. This is absolutely critical, and things must be dealt with. If we don't deal with them, we are just setting ourselves up for devastation. We're just setting ourselves up to repeat suffering, trauma, different things like that. We're just setting ourselves up to go down a bad path in things. Lost things we're going to find resurface. Now, this is going to be interesting, and I think about this with things, for example, like with the Epstein files, when we look at world events, okay? We could all of a sudden hear about files or documents that are found that they didn't have. Think about the Clintons getting ready to testify. Maybe by the time this video gets out, they'll be in that process. I'm not sure because I'm not sure the exact date that's happening. This is being filmed on the 19th of February. There could be some things brought up in them or files suddenly found during these hearings or these processes that come out. There's the possibility that there could be what's been released. There could be fake files that have been put out there. And then as the hearings come out, real files suddenly become found and the real information comes out even more. So I don't know if that's the case or not. I look at this, for example, Savannah Guthrie's mom, Nancy Guthrie. I think there's a whole bunch of stuff that's off around that. Now, I do care. I do care that she's found, very much so. I hope she is. I hope she's safe. I hope that she's okay. I hope there's no harm to her, but there's just stuff that is off around that. So this is that time period in March where all of a sudden it's like, oh, look, all of a sudden she's found. This could be also a time where there's a lot more missing children who are found. Um, again, this is that lost and found. So things that have been lost, we want to look at it. Where freedom has been lost, maybe people start to find their freedom. Where people have lost their confidence, maybe they start to find their confidence in there. Lost things are going to resurface. And when these things resurface, it's going to bring up a lot of emotions. This could be clues on cases that would be considered dead file cases. In other words, they've just set them aside and they're not looking at them anymore. So a lot of emotions, whatever comes up from the past, whatever is found, is likely to stir up a lot of emotions for people. And this is going to be very interesting, I think, to see. We must remember in all of this, especially when making choices, what is really important. What holds real value in the world? Not just money value, not just what creates wealth and rich homes and status and stuff like that. We've got to remember what holds real value. We've got to remember what is important, our time with family, our time with friends, our freedoms, our right to choose things, a variety of different things like that. So we've got to keep that in mind. Things are probably going to be put on hold during these first 3 weeks. So we could see holds, we could see delays, and this is likely to be connected to learning about the motives of things. What is the motives behind what is being pushed forward? Is there something that's not in divine alignment? Is there something that's trying to be presented as a good thing? Is there greed underneath it? And I think these are things that are going to be unfolding. And I know this is hard. I know patience is hard, and people are frustrated about not having things move faster. But again, we've got people in all these different spaces and places, and we have to bring more and more people into seeing things because there's a lot of people out there that just don't follow a lot of stuff. And in some ways, I think that's really great. I really support that. And in other ways, that means they don't know everything that's happening. Um, and so we need to be patient with this process. They're on hold for a reason, they're delayed for a reason. And we don't want to just push and rush through things. We want things to be done in a quality way. We want them to be done with integrity. We want them to be done in a way that is actually going to make a difference and that we actually can pull into more favorable circumstances. If we just try to rush and push through everything and just go out and go, okay, rest everybody now. You know, this is the thing, rest everybody now, put them all in jail, do whatever, it you can't do it. You got to do it right. And to do it right, you've got to have some patience and you've got to just be able to stop and breathe and realize, especially some of what may put things on hold is stuff being found, new information coming in that influences the decisions, that influences the direction of things, that influences the path to take. And that has to be sat with and looked over and decided on. So don't get frustrated with these holds and these delays. Chances are they're actually going to work out in a favorable way, or lead to favorable things as a result of that. Very, very important in that. And they have to be brought into a divine alignment. So that's another thing. There may be things that, as old stuff surfaces, stuff that's been lost resurfaces, that leads us to have to make shifts and changes to the course that we're on. And so we've got to make sure when we're making these shifts and changes, are we standing in integrity? Are we on the course that we need to be? Are we on the course that's actually going to create something favorable, or are we just going down another destructive path? And again, we can't buy into this fear of rush, 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 push, push, push. Yes, in some ways, things have to be done within certain time periods. But that being said, we also have to have the patience to let them be done in favorable and positive ways. So do not get discouraged. Hang in there. Just don't get overly anxious. Draw into the patience virtue. That's a big thing. Patience is a really big virtue for us to draw on right now. We really need to draw on this. And we really need to work at things that to see, is this in divine service? Is this actually truly beneficial or not? And that's another thing, because you can be going down a path thinking, I'm doing the right thing, it's really beneficial. Even with world leaders, they may be going down one path saying, hey, this looks really good. And they start to go down that path and it's like, oh, we need to change directions here. This isn't going to work the way that we thought it was going to work. We're going to have to take a different direction. We're going to have to implement something. We've got to make some adjustments before we move forward. So many times this stagnation that comes up, these delays come up, are going to be to our benefit. And we don't want them to move forward in corruption. We don't want them to move forward without integrity. So that's all very important. We need to work from unconditional love right now. So again, this is almost kind of like that strict parent, like, I know what you want, but I can't give that to you right now. You know, uh, unconditional love doesn't mean just giving people whatever they want. It means that we have to look at what is truly from a heart space, what holds true value. It's kind of like the kid that says, hey, I want the really big mansion and the really fancy cars and I want all of that stuff. Yeah, but those aren't what holds true value. What holds true value in our world is like self-sufficiency, is people being able to take care of themselves, being able to own their own property and not have everything owned by big corporations and um, various pieces like that. So very important in there to let that happen, to work from that space. And that is also part of the pauses and the delays is like, what truly does bring in unconditional love? Where is that sitting? And as we know, sometimes that means saying no to people for things that they want or their desires, because there's something bigger that has to be looked at. There's something more at play than that. And this is also a good time because when people are working from unconditional love, they're working towards the benefit and the well-being of people as opposed to all personal gain and all money pieces. So that's a beneficial aspect. We're going to see things coming out about affairs and sexual escapades. A lot of betrayal energy coming up during this time. And I think this is hard. I think we're already seeing this with the Epstein pieces. I think there's a lot more of it to come out. And these connections, these pieces, I think that I think we're going to see a lot more of the betrayal pieces. I think the betrayal is the big energy in here where people broke their commitments. They broke their vows. They broke their oaths. So we could see a lot of things coming up, for example, around leaders or politicians who broke an oath of office or people that broke their oath in their position, therefore losing their clearances, therefore losing security access, the variety of things like that. So I think we have a lot more coming up, but of course, a lot of this is going to be around particularly sexuality things, affairs that were going on, and how these things have led to perhaps insecurity in a company. We've seen that. We know there are affairs that have gone on between people that led to leaking country secrets or government information to spies through affairs. Um, so I think we have some big pieces that are going to come out around that. We're going to see who is and is not committed through love. Who's working from their heart? Who's committed to doing something because it's in their heart? Again, versus personal gain in here. Biblical connections or a divine hand in things. We're also going to see that coming into play. So that's going to be really interesting to see. We could see a lot of religious people starting to come out again. They've been a little bit quiet for a while. I think they're going to come out again. We're going to see a bunch of stuff start coming out again about, oh, this is in the Bible. This is very biblical. This is, this is God's work, and I think we have to be careful of some of these lines, honestly, because I think some of it could be divinely connected. There can always be divine intervention that is happening in things. There can always be a variety of different pieces along that line. But um, we've got to be careful of justifying whatever is happening as biblical. Again, taking it and making it fit our needs. I've seen some of this recently in different groups, and people will use this got very big actually for a while. It's kind of settled a little bit, but it may be resurfacing here the next couple of months, where people will start using the Bible to cite all the stuff that's happening to justify their point of view and making all of these biblical connections. And we have to be very careful because so many of those are distorted to support somebody's viewpoint and being used to justify things as opposed to being the truth in there. But again, we could also see genuine, true biblical connections in things created to the different delays and things being put on hold or resurfacing or things like that. So there could be those pieces where something resurfaces, say geologically, and that might be a divine connection that is happening, or even a prophecy fulfilled in some way. We could see some of that in these times. Uh, we want to shift towards what is soulful, natural rhythms. I think about this especially as we come into spring, because in the United States, that's always been a time that as we come into the spring, we have daylight savings time. And it would be interesting to see if they're going to stop that time change this time around. They allowed it to fall back. Is this the year they're going to stop that? Is this the point they're going to stop that? I don't really know. But I do know that one of the things that will benefit us will be to move more towards what is soulful, to what is honoring and embracing natural rhythms. So again, this may be coming back to where we'll hear more about businesses closing on Sundays. We'll have um, more people coming back to honoring a day of rest or um, not working past certain hours or placing family time as a higher priority and value, and so when they go home the work phone is shut off, they're no longer accessible, and that starts becoming a boundary or a requirement with their job or their employment or things like that, getting back into some of those things. And I think too we have to kind of demand that respect, like, hey, I give you 40 hours or 60 hours of work this week. Yeah, this is my time, and I'm not going to respond to you on my time because you need to deal with me on the times that I'm being paid, that I'm on the clock, so to say. Those are the types of things we may see, and that can be a soulful thing too. Again, honoring things of value can be a soulful thing. So I think we have some shifts going on, and some of these shifts are hard. They're difficult for people because they want to move faster than they can. Um, but we want to remember things are in divine order. There is a lot that is in divine order, even though it looks like there's a lot of chaos out there. There's a greater connection going on to God, divine source. This is a connection that we may hear more and more people moving towards that direction, whether that is, again, a religion or a spiritual practice or something like that. People are seeking more connection, and they're wanting more of that all throughout choices in life, through from their political leaders. They're wanting the political leaders to choose things that hold divine connection, that hold a stronger connection to that. And that's really about values. That's really about spiritual qualities and upholding those things. That's taking a high priority for people right now. And it's like, look, it's not just about this. Yes, we have to have an economy stable enough to create a strong country, but we also need to honor these other pieces. It can't be one or the other. When we have one or the other, we're out of balance and we make ourselves too vulnerable. We have to have a balance of the two pieces. What we're going to see, I think, during this time is the releasing of excesses and focusing on creating more freedom, and that all ties into this. So again, we could see more, I don't know whether it's Doge stuff or other things like that, cutting out the excesses. We're going to probably see more stuff being dug up from what's been going on for a long time, perhaps, that needs to be cleared and transformed and shifted and adjusted and cutting the excesses, which in many ways is about cutting fraud. It's about cutting benefits to people who aren't entitled to the benefits. We're going to see probably more of that getting cut, released, taken care of, and coming down to some of the necessities. And as we do that, then we actually create the resources that we need to create greater freedom for people. So if you cut off, for example, the people who aren't entitled to benefits, if you cut off the benefits that are going to dead people, if you cut off these sorts of pieces, right? Now you have more resources to work with for the people who are actually in need, and to not just the people in need, but people across the board to be able to get into homes, to be able to purchase the basics, to have a decent life for their family, to create safe areas for people, safe neighborhoods, um, to give them the freedom to be able to go out and experience life a little bit instead of just working all the time. So I think we're going to see some of that going on. And this doesn't necessarily mean a loss of job. It's actually an improvement of quality of life. And that's a big thing. So I think too, this could tear down some of the status of the elite. It could tear down some of the extravagant lifestyles and helping people see how they can make it. Now, that last week and a half of the month, partnerships become very big, partnerships for success with those who are different from us and who balance us. So, what this is going to be about is seeing the partnerships probably that come up, particularly in world leaders, where they may handle things very, very differently. They may even be working under different systems, but they have common goals. Um, you see this talked about. Trump talks about this a lot. Hey, I don't necessarily agree with that person. It's not how I would run my country, but we have this common goal and we do want to prosper. And if we all are prospering and we're all strong, it's like, hey, I want people around me that are going to work with me who are going to be strong people. And if they're strong, then we don't have to deal with some of the crappy things that are out there. It's just a basic common good sense principle in that aspect. So these partnerships, I think, are going to be a bit unusual. I think they're going to be creating the balances. And again, it's about working towards common goals. It's about joining different skill sets together to get something accomplished and to hold each other in integrity. See, when you have people that have different views and you have people that come from different backgrounds and different skill sets, they actually help to hold each other in integrity. Because they say, hey, but we got to keep this in mind, or you can't go too far that way. So they kind of keep each other in check to a certain extent. And I think this is also going to be interesting because when we look at past stuff that's coming up, which is all throughout this month, we may find that there are some people who maybe weren't so good in the past, but they've changed, they've learned, they've adjusted, they've changed course. They're working differently now, and now they are doing good things in the world. And they're trying to correct that past behavior. They're trying to make amends. They're trying to clear that karma. And we have to be open to that too. So we can't just judge somebody, for example, by what they may have done 20 years ago or 30 years ago or 50 years ago. I mean, let's face it, we all mess up when we're young. We all make some poor decisions in our life when we're young. And the key is, do we learn from them? Do we own those mistakes? Do we move forward? Do we make changes? Do we make amends? Do we clear things up? That's what makes the difference. So we could see some very unlikely partnerships coming around, but partnerships do benefit us. And again, we can partner with people that aren't such great people necessarily, or don't subscribe to the same way of life that we subscribe to, but we could still have a good partnership with them. We could still do good business with them. And I think that's what we're going to be seeing, and that's a direction that we're headed. Is this let's work together, even though we have these different views. Responsible actions. That is laying a base for a new cycle. So here again, this is what's got to be done. This is what needs to be done. May not be everything you like, desire, want, whatever, but it's what needs to be done. We have to do the work if we're going to get the results. So again, we got to have the patience to put in the effort to get the results that we are trying to move towards in things to lay that solid foundation. We need to do that. We want to take the time for reflection on things that have gotten broken, that have fallen apart, that where morals and values were sacrificed for status, for personal gain. And now we've got to choose something that is a path that's connected with God or divine service. So what we're choosing, yes, it's got to be, on one hand, it's got to be profitable and it's got to take care of us, but it's also got to be a humanitarian path, a truly humanitarian one, not that is about controlling countries and cultures and things like that, like we've seen through a lot of what Gates has done, for example. Um, we see that where he's done a lot of different things in like Africa and things like that. Um, Instead, we want to really choose what truly is humane. You have all these organizations out there that are laundering money and they're funneling money into the corruption. And if we got rid of that excess of funneling to the corruption and it just went to the people or the animals or the planet or the environmental pieces, we could do a whole lot more than what we're doing in there. And this is a big key. So, yeah, we shouldn't be upset. When we hear some of these things, I hear people, they get so upset. It's like, oh my God, they cut the funding to this and they cut the funding to that. No, they're really just kind of cutting out the excess, the garbage, the fraud, those pieces. And then when we restructure that, we can restructure that, and then we can get more to the people, get more to the organizations so that they can be helped. We can do more for them if we get rid of the fraud. It's like taking out the middleman. If you take out the broker in the deal, you can give more to the person buying, so to say. Um, so we do have a lot of components like that. So a lot of reflection in this again can be some of that pause energy. It can be part of why things aren't moving forward is because we have to stop and think things through. Some of these things, you just get one chance at them. You don't get multiple chances. You have to do it right the first time. So you have to take the time to really think about things and really come into them from a clear headspace. Now, we do have, in this last week and a half, we're probably going to see a lot of progression, a lot of advancements, a lot of forward momentum, and it's probably going to happen very fast. This will happen where things are in that divine alignment, where they are in that God connection, so to say. And unfortunately, when we have this energy, the rough side of this is retaliation. So when people are held accountable, there's going to be retaliation. There could be assassinations happening. Usually our assassinations are high profile people. They're your political leaders, they're your celebrities, they're your deeper inside people with high status or standing or things like that. And what these retaliations are an attempt to block and break spirit. So their attempt to block what's happening, their attempt to block that forward momentum, And they're an attempt to break the spirit of people to say, see, you have no hope. See, if you do this, if you tell the truth, we're going to kill you, type of thing. So that is that's a risky place to be because when you enter into this space and you take that advancement, or our leaders take that advancement, they move forward with something, they've got to be ready to go full speed ahead and not look back, which is again why you have to take that pause and that time to make sure you have everything ready to go and it can operate in such a great smoothness and such a great swiftness that there isn't time for the interference to come up. So I think we're going to see those things. So in some ways that could be exciting, in some ways that could be very scary to go through. Um, in some ways there's going to be losses with the gains. You know, we're going to gain some things, we're going to have some losses. There's going to be the proverbial war casualties that go on with that. And so we're just going to have to, you know, stay alert, and it's just part of nature. You know, we want every animal to live and have this beautiful life like Bambi or something, you know, but the reality of it is it's not all like that. And that sometimes, you know, sometimes something just doesn't go through so nicely. Um, but that's just part of dealing with this type of energetic battle that is present, that's part of dealing with forward momentum. You've got to have the gusto and the guts to go forward, regardless of the attempts to retaliate. You just have to be ready to deal with them and not let them break you down or stop you. So we may see some pauses, but that doesn't mean everything's getting stopped. It's just a regrouping. An increase in military and naval activity, particularly Navy activity in this time. This is going to be the threat to corruption. What is happening here, just like these advancements, when you make good advancements, especially if they're coming through partnerships, um, then you're going to trigger fear in those who are corrupt, you know, that have committed crimes, that have done things they shouldn't have done. And so as you're doing that, that is going to create a threat to the corruption, to those people who are criminals. And that threat is going to feel heightened to them. So yes, they're going to have the retaliation, maybe the assassinations, and then that's going to lead into a need for an increase of military and naval activity. So again, we have this whole cycling of events that is going on there, this whole trigger chain of events that's going on. Again, I don't think we need to be scared, you know, and some of this maybe we could also see naval positioning, military positioning happening to avoid danger as a preventative measure out there. It doesn't mean that, oh my God, all of a sudden we're a communist country or something like that. It doesn't, you know, that's not what it means. We might be doing some preventative care to get the corruption down in areas. Um, but this is natural. You know, it's just like paying more attention. If you know you have somebody who is a child predator in your neighborhood, well, then you put up more protection around your neighborhood to take care of your children. It's the same kind of concept. You know, it doesn't mean you're taking over everybody's lives. You're trying to protect them. And, you know, it's until that threat is gone. So a lot of triggering, a lot of triggering on each side there. True leaders are going to see success. So in this time, so we want to look at who's having real success, who is getting that rapid movement, because whether we want to admit it or not, those are the people who are in divine alignment. Those are the people who are working for something good. And again, there's all kinds of illusions that can go on, but and optics that can go on, but it's the leaders who are in divine alignment that are having success. Now, we also are going to have the greedy, the uncaring leaders, and those people are going to be bringing their own destruction. And that is because they're seeking battles and not peace. So I think of like the ongoing battle that is between Russia and Ukraine as an example. Okay, who's seeking peace? Who's seeking to keep the war going? And that's where we know who's in integrity and who isn't. Because the ones that are in integrity are going to be seeking the peace. The ones who are not in integrity, who are working for corruption, are seeking to have wars and battles and won't come to any kind of agreements. Solutions are found by understanding different perspectives and needs. So we need to look at the different sides. It's like, whether you're talking a battle, whether you're talking an argument, whatever it is, it's like, well, what does this side need? And what does this side need? What does each side need? What's their needs? What's their desires? Well, and this is part of what makes Trump the great negotiator that he is. Like him or hate him, doesn't matter. He's a great negotiator in things. And what makes him that is that he has the ability to see the different perspectives of each side and what their needs are. And then that is used to come to an agreement. You want this, you need this, you desire this. Well, okay, here's where you got to find your balance in there. This is what they need. This is what they desire. This is what they've got to have. So we gotta come to an agreement here in things. And he's done this a lot. He has that gift and that ability to do that. So he's said it many times. It doesn't mean, for example, that he agrees with some third world leader that's not treating their people well. But he can look at it and say, if I was that person and I was sitting in that mindset and I was in their country and running things from that um, base of culture, um, or that type of rulership, that's what I would choose. This is part of how he knows what people are going to do because he can look at things through their eyes, not just how he wants to see them, but how they see them. And that's where you really learn how to make people your allies and where you really learn to understand the next move your enemy is going to take. If you can't look at things through their eyes, you're going to have a really hard time seeing what they're going to do, and then you're going to be in trouble. When you do look at things through their eyes, then you can take those preventative steps and you can be ready for whatever they choose. Um, Actions, our action energy, what physical types of things are we going to be seeing? Just those first 2 days of the month, I think are going to be actually pretty low energy, low key. People aren't going to have a lot of energy to do things. They're going to be taking a little personal time, maybe those first couple of days. We do have the bullying, the victim energy coming up, so there could be some chaos getting stirred up from the people that aren't doing the self-care, that are more chaos and more needy in nature. Um, there could be some of the corruption or the criminals, however you want to call them, seeking suffering on those who don't want to conform, who don't want to just blindly follow them or give in to them. So these people who are wanting a lot of power and control will probably see some moves from them that are designed to hurt people. And I don't like to see that, but that is the mindset that they live in. Like they have to suppress those people somehow in order to get control over them. Um, Jealousies and insecurities surface a lot during this time, which makes them even more insecure about their position of power because they know they're not operating in corruption. They know they're operating under all this force. And when they get jealous and they get insecure of things and they don't have the power that they want, then they really can turn ugly. But these insecurities, the other way it can play out is it can really it can also take allies that a country or people have and turn those allies against them. So we could see, again, people changing what side they're standing on. You could see Democrats become Republicans. You could see Republicans become Democrats. You could see these different changes. But a lot of this stuff happens out of fear. It happens out of a belief that that's what is needed for self-survival. not having the strength or the confidence to stand in what's real or what's true. So that too can be a little unsettling for some people. Suppression of, again, dissenting voices. Those people who want to speak up, speak the truth, who want to challenge authority and say, nope, I'm not following this, who are very personally strong. We're going to probably see some attempts to suppress them in these first couple of days. Those who are strong, who know their value and their worth and don't seek attention to get it, because when you really know your value and worth and you know what you have to offer, you don't have to go out and get attention. It comes to you. This is a big thing. So those without skills will give allegiance to those in power. If they don't have skills, if they don't know how to stand up for themselves, if they don't have personal strength or confidence, they're just going to turn their power over to people who are already in positions of power. And that's being done to get acknowledged. But if somebody does have the strength and the confidence, they're not just going to turn that power over. We need to stand up for those who have been bullied. So this is an important time. Maybe we'll see something come out that's an initiative that comes out that whether that's helping abuse victims, whether that's animal rights, whatever that is, um, that is going to support people. Maybe there is like witness protection stuff that's offered up from people who are being bullied for, uh, but have information that needs to come out, whatever that is. From the 3rd through the end of the month, this is going to be a big time of taking power back from predators. So we could see some big moves in some way, and particularly that last week and a half of the month. We especially, when we talk about these predators, this is particularly seeming to apply to false prophets, gurus, teachers. So again, think of this, the Deepak Chopra range in there, but predators come in all kinds of forms. They can even come in forms of, like I said, teachers, our school teachers. Some of them are serious predators. Um, so we have to take our power back. We have to take our power back from these people and and take some forward momentum in that direction. This is a time of increasing our self-sufficiency with mentors and life experiences and effort. So again, we're not just going to get handed the glory. We have to put in the effort. We have to get our own experiences. We need to draw on the wisdom of people who have actual experiences. Again, not just somebody who has a title or has been placed in a position, but who has actual experiences. And we can see during this time who cares and who keeps us weak and controlled. Those people who care are trying to strengthen us, give us more opportunities, give us more rights, give us more freedoms, reduce our restrictions on things. The people who are trying to keep us weak and controlled are trying to place more restrictions, trying to restrain us, trying to confine us, trying to tell us what to do. So looking for those types of things. This is a period where we're going to see predators seeking money. So there could be more high-profile kidnappings going on. This is when we can see ransom stuff coming around. This is where we can see a lot of false promises coming up. So we have to be very careful of that. People promising things and then not delivering on them. We've got to be very careful. That's all predator energy that's going on. This is also going to be a big trial and error period that's going on, and our experiences will strengthen us. So don't be afraid. This is like saying, hey, there's going to be ups and there's going to be downs during this time, and it's going to probably feel a bit like a roller coaster. It's going to be a bit like one day everything's flowing and the next day it feels like everything's crashing. One day everything's going in our favor, the next day nothing's going our way. So it can feel like that when we have experiences because we've got to learn things. And some of the highs and the lows may be created to see where the strengths and the weaknesses are, to get a gauge for what needs to be developed, what needs to be focused on. So again, a little bit of trial and error. And some of what's being done, even though we have a lot of the past repeating, is new stuff. And it's paving new territory and it's like testing the waters. Well, let's see, okay, where do they react? Oh, that's where they react. We can't go all the way over here. This is the point we got to work from. Not here, not there. It's here that we got to work from. Um, so there's that aspect. So I say don't get too wrapped up in that. Don't get too wrapped up in this roller coaster highs and lows. We need to experience things, and our experiences are going to show us what we need to strengthen. Turmoil, drama, upheaval, all of that is coming up during this month. A lot of actions, we could see some false flags coming around. That would be an example of stirring up drama or turmoil, trying to distract people from other things that might be coming up and surfacing and uh, re, coming back up, showing itself from the past, so to say, being found. I could easily see that we could have some distractions along that line. When I talk about that ransom energy that I mentioned too, that can also be political parties saying we're not going to agree to something unless you give us this. When you do that and it's like, well, we're all going to hold this ground until you give us that. That's a type of a ransom, really, um, in there. So we have to consider these things. And that doesn't mean that we shouldn't stand our ground if something is true and right. But if we're standing it only for personal gain and political purposes, then we're holding things ransom, especially when whatever needs to get through is for the benefit of the people. Tests, temptations, and initiations. So a lot of that going on too. So there's a lot of testing the water. So we could see certain leaders testing different people around them, testing other world leaders, saying, okay, where are they at? Where trying to get that gauge. Can they be tempted? Can they be corrupted in things? So we could also see that. We could see a lot of sort of traps being set, um, just to see whether somebody takes them or not, just to test their integrity level. Are they truly in divine alignment? Are they truly working for the people, or are they working for themselves? Are they feeding and nourishing their own addictions? Are they holding on to addictive patterns? Can they be influenced? Can they be swayed? Because again, when you're dealing with some of the operations that are going on in our world, you don't want people who can be swayed. They got to be strong enough to do the right thing, regardless of what's being put in front of them. And this is how a lot of the corruption has happened, is temptations have been given to people and people have taken those temptations. And that's led us to, maybe a temporary euphoria and then this total crash and devastation and hardship and other things. So, um, yeah, it's not just one person, it's not just one party, A lot of people have contributed to this. So, thoughts, where the mindset is going to be for people. Again, a lot from the 1st through the 21st, so those first 3 weeks of the months, a lot of the past resurfacing. Memories are going to be very active during this time. Current experiences are tied to past choices. So again, we got to look at it and say, what are we experiencing? Okay, what choices created us to be in this position now? We have to think about these things. They're going to have to take time. And again, this will be part of the pauses in there where we have to stop and think about how did we get to the point we're at? We can't change something unless we understand how we got to where we're at now. Um, and again, these memories being very active with people. As the past resurface, it's going to trigger different memories. It's going to trigger old stuff that maybe we haven't thought about in a long time or we've forgotten about. In there. So in some ways we are repeating the past. The question is, how are we going to move forward? Are we going to repeat the choices of the past? Are we going to choose wise things? Are we going to choose unwise things? All of those different pieces. I just did my regular video on my other channel about choices and how we make those wise choices. This time could provide second chances for us, but we've got to think things through and we've got to choose what is favorable. So we've got to stop and say, have I changed? Am I on the right track? Am I supporting virtues? Am I supporting values? Am I supporting, good qualities? Am I supporting a good life for people? Or am I just looking at what's the next big sports car I could get or robot or whatever else in there? And we're not gonna we're not gonna have a favorable future unless we are considering what's of true benefit, what's going to be the truly favorable path forward. Um, Very important piece of this is that we need to break repeating patterns. So we've got to break those addictive patterns. We've got to break the addictive mind set. We've got to break the our temptations, our tests. We've got to pass those in there. So we've got to break these repeating patterns. And in some ways, that kind of brings us full circle with things. In particular, we're going to be coming full circle with diseases. And those diseases are especially going to have a connection to learning, which I connect with dementia, autism, ADHD, your brain diseases, or just things that affect the brain in there and the way that we think. I think we're going to find out some full circle moments of, look, when we issued this in the past, or we put that medication out, or whatever it is, that it actually led to creating some of these diseases that then affected people's ability to think, to have a clear mind, to make wise choices, to focus, different things like that. So I think we're going to start to see those connections coming out again, coming full circle on some things. Also, diseases connected to the genitals. So when I think of that, I think of like AIDS, for example. That's a common one that was really big. I know there's some others out there, but also a lot of the things like shingles, autoimmune disorders, a lot of those are connected to what we would have basically called, STDs at one point. So I think these sexually transmitted diseases, we're going to see another full circle moment coming on those and more stuff being revisited on them and connections around them and what decisions and things created that. When did they originate? When did they all of a sudden start coming out in the population? How does that coordinate with changes in the food system, in vaccination schedules, or things that were being sprayed on the crops, or whatever it is? There's a connection there. And the diseases don't just pop out of nowhere. There's connections there. Also, colon diseases connected to the colon. So when we look at that, that's going to be like our digestive and our eating disorders and our ability to process food. And, we look at things like celiac, gluten aspects, weight issues, cancer. And of course, when you're dealing with the colon, you're dealing with the gut, that affects so many other organs and things in the body as well. They say a lot of the diseases start in the gut area. So I think there's going to be another aspect of coming full circle. Well, when did we destroy our gut? And what are the things that have done that? I'm sure some of it is the pressuring into surgeries that may not have been necessary. It just needed a change of diet, or it needed some other things. We've seen that a lot with things like with thyroid. We've seen that a lot, which no, it's not in the colon, but there's connections in there. Um, uh, Removing pancreas, different things like that. There's a lot of different things that I think we've pushed people into surgeries that may not have been necessary. And I speak that from experience because I've had the gallbladder removed. I've had my whole abdomen area worked on with adhesions, and I've had, um, hysterectomy things, and I've had um, my appendix removed, and, various things. I've had a lot of work in my body done physically. And as a result of those things, I think when I reflect back now, if I had the information then that I had now and the understanding of things better then, as much as I was trying then, I didn't have this information, I probably wouldn't have done those surgeries. And I can see now how much of them were pushed for money and not out of need. So again, big things that we have to look at. During this time, people are going to need a mental break. They need time to digest and process things. Another reason why we will see a lapse and kind of a little break in things, making these big progressions, because it's kind of like eating too much food. If you eat too much food, you can't digest it and process it in your body well. So the same thing is true when we talk about information, when we talk about life events, when we talk about those things happening. We need time to stop and digest and to process things and to integrate them and to discern what's happening with our experiences, to discern what things are. And this is so important because sometimes, especially when new things surface, right, or past things resurface or things become found, we need to be able to integrate that in to the other pieces. Um, and when we learn new things along the way, we need to be able to integrate those into the pieces. So I think here again, a little bit quieter in some ways as far as things that are happening, just because people have to have that time to stop and process. I mean, again, I look at what people are processing with, for example, the Epstein files. And there's a lot of people that are having a hard time processing some of the names that are in there, some of the things that were done. And again, what a lot of people are seeing now, I mean, some people have known a lot for a long time, but a lot of masses, what they're just starting to see at this point is really hard to process. They're having a really hard time with it. So how are they going to process the bigger stuff? You know, if you can't process the amuse-bouche or the appetizer or the salad, how are you going to process the meal? You can't, because your body's going to reject it. You're going to reject everything. So this processing time is very, very important. This digesting, this integrating time is very, very important. And we need to honor that as much as we honor the action part. Helping people to get through experiences with therapy and mentors and to deal with things. So again, I think we're going to be seeing this focus in this time of how do we work with people now? How do we help them get through what they're feeling, the emotions that are coming up, the things that they're dealing with, having to face the lies. And this gets tricky because there's been talk about deprogramming and reprogramming people, which had to be done in a variety of different war times where people were so brainwashed that they had to be deprogrammed from the brainwashing. Now, some of that was used in corrupt ways, and some of that was used in other ways, and it's very hard mentally on people. So I think we have to have compassion, and I think we have to have forgiveness. And even people who have been hardcore on some of their stances, they may start to shift those stances, and we need to accept the shifts that are happening for them and support that. And we need to have a whole heck of a lot of patience with them in trying to process things because there's a lot of people who can't process some of this stuff well. It's just too overwhelming. And so we may see more things coming out that are going to put things in place to help people in this process. So even if it's not implemented now, it could be a new bill that says we're going to make sure that people have access to be able to get certain things that they need, that they have the resources that they need, that they have the people that they can go and talk to, and that they can choose who those people are in there. So I think this is going to be a big piece. We have to be able to discern between who wants to help and those who are preying on our hardships and our weaknesses. This is huge, and our desires and are working for personal profit. Um, these things can be used again, that predator can use these things like a ransom. I'll withhold your desires. I'll withhold what will help you until you give me what I want. These are mind games that are going on. These are serious, serious mind games. And here again, this is what helps us. If we step away and we get clear and we get away from all the input and we can look at things from a clearer, more rational perspective, a more objective perspective, then we can have the ability to discern things. But again, we have to get out of seeing things the way we want to see them and start seeing them for what they are. And to start, you know, really, really just looking at the baseline of things, the facts of things. Um, but that discernment's going to be really important. And this is part of why they try to confuse the mind so much. This is why they try to overwhelm people so much and give them too much to handle and um, overwhelm their senses and things like that. Because when they do that, then people can't think rationally. They can't make those discernment pieces coming up in there. So, in this, we have to look deeper to find the truth. It's not all going to be on the surface. So what doesn't seem good on the surface might be very good underneath it. Vice versa, what what seems very good on the surface might not be underneath it. So we got to get into that. I think we'll probably see that what some people offer, it might sound good on the surface, but it comes with a really high price. We see this with things that are happening, for example, in New York. Well, look, we're going to have, government grocery stores, or we're going to have this, or we're going to have that, or we're going to take care of these people, or we're going to tax the wealthy. Well, for a lot of people, they think, oh, that sounds really good, but they don't realize what they're giving up for those things. And as they're already starting to find out, guess what? Those things aren't working. Some of those stores are closing. They're not thriving. They're not going through. Um, it's just an excuse to take more from the people who don't have it to give. And it's not really coming out of the people who are in that top percentage of people of wealth and income. So we've got to be very careful of that. Again, we got to dig beneath the surface because it can sound good on the surface. It might sound like a nice thing. And that's where I come back to a lot of people that get pulled into lies. They're pulled into them because they sound good. It's what they want to hear. They like the idea, they like the concept, but they don't really understand what all's attached to that concept. And if it was just the concept in and of itself, yes, it's great. But unfortunately, a lot of times that concept is used to pull at people's heartstrings to get their mind programmed and thinking and to get them to comply to different things. Um, they're the false promises. I think we're going to see a lot of problem reaction solution stuff happening in this time. So we're going to have to be careful of that. This is the concept of saying, hey, you're really cursed, or hey, you can't think for yourself, or this or that. Therefore, we're going to do it for us. And, it's like, see, you're in fear. You can't do this. I've got you all, like putting people in fear. And then when people are in that reactive fear and it's like, oh my God, I'm immobilized. Oh, here's a solution for you. Here's the solution you want. So we got to be very careful of that. We're going to see a lot of use of fake credentials during this time. Uh, Fake reviews, fake notoriety, and this is happening like where people are put into position, but they haven't necessarily been elected into those positions. They don't necessarily have the qualifications to be in that position. They're just given that position. And that is part of trying to create networks and partnerships to sustain criminal networks or corruption that is going on. So a lot of false prophet energy. A lot of people that are kind of bought and placed and having that exposed in there, um, exposing like cult mentality. I think we're going to see that coming out, and people are going to be able to see that. And this comes out a lot, these false prophets, this cult mentality is going to come out where people think that they're better than other people. So really look for that, especially in the spiritual industry, religions. Where do they place themselves above? There's a lot of religions out there that place themselves above everybody else, which is actually not in alignment with religious teachings in essence. And so when we see that, and that's where we could see the trigger in some of like the Islamic connections, even some of the Jewish cultures are like that. There's a lot of religions, Christians, there's a lot of religions that have aspects. And I'm not saying all the Christians out there or all the Islams or all the Jews or all of that. It just runs through a lot of belief systems that they're better than other people because of their practice, because of their belief, because of this, because of that. And that's not in the true teachings. If you get into the real teachings of Christ, he was not about separating people off in these groups. He was not giving his attention only to one group or claiming only one group to be right. He dealt with everybody. And when we look at a lot of the teachings, it's like God is running through all kinds of things. It's man that has distorted them and sought out the power and sought out the better than everybody else's perspective, because that's how a lot of the religions get control over people. Same thing with the spiritual gurus. You got a lot of spiritual gurus out there who place themselves as better than others. and it gets them in trouble. So we're going to see that coming up. Um, and this is all about really trying to get people dependent. It's a mental game that gets people to be dependent on them, to think, well, I'm not good enough. I'm not as good as this person. And so I've got to bow to them. I've got to listen to everything they've said. Just don't buy into that. It's just a big mind psych in there. From the 22nd on through the end of the month, so that last week and a half, we're going to see a lot of things being very heavy, very one-sided. This can be a time that's very hard on our spirit, on our emotions. We can feel like our spirit's breaking. And this is a time, again, remember, this is when we have that retaliation energy coming in, that assassination coming in. And I don't think those are going to be normal retaliations. They're going to be specifically designed to break our spirit, to show us, look, you're going to fail. You can't succeed here, that type of thing. We don't want to play into that. We must not let others take advantage of us just because they can. And this is huge. And sometimes, it's better to just not have certain things than to be taken advantage of or to be used by people. And it's so easy, especially if we have needs, to give in and to go, I'll just do this one thing. But we don't want to do that because the big tool that's going to be used during this time as part of the mind game is guilt. You owe me this. You've got to pay us back. Our system has paid for you. Now you owe us this. And this could be an interesting twist in things, actually, because if they try to pull this, for example, with illegal aliens that have come into countries, if they try to use that guilt and manipulation tactic on them, it very well could backfire. It very well. Some will just comply, especially if they're criminal based, if they've got a terrorist history or something like that, they may just comply because they don't care because they've already developed that callousness. But others are going to be like, no, that's too much like where I came from. I don't want to, I'm not playing that game. And so I think it's going to get very interesting in that. A lot of attempts to cause non-materialistic people to suffer and be in hardship. But again, don't go down that big spiral. This is a very temporary, fleeting thing. It's a rebellion thing. It's not going to really succeed. It's just that retaliation. It's like the spoiled brat being told no, not getting what they want all of a sudden. And so they lash out and try to make everybody else hurt, in pain. They strike out at them, whatever. They hit them, whatever. Um, so yeah, we have to be prepared. Yes, there could be very hard things to deal with in this time. But again, we don't want it to break our spirit. We need to just double up in our spirit. We need to just really stand strong, in that divine alignment through this process. Because they will try. They will try for the suffering. They'll try for the hardship. And if we're unwilling to, and this is particularly going to be focused on people who are unwilling to do the bidding, who won't just follow orders on things that come from materialistic people, that come from criminal syndicates or corruption. A lot of illusions of control, and that's the other thing. These tactics that are meant to break our spirit is just an illusion of control. These people don't have real control. It's an illusion of control. And these are the people that end up playing like they're the victim or they're helpless. Oh, look, they attacked me. Well, no, you've been provoking them for the last 20 years. What do you expect? You know, no, they didn't just do it. They're just tired of dealing with your BS and now they're taking action on it. So I think that is, is that a big thing? So we have to be careful of the people playing the victim during this time because chances are they are not the victim. Um, some may have to fall in order to learn. So they may have to take a fall. They may have to take a tumble. Um, they may have to go through some hardships in order to learn what is really going on or to create accountability or to create responsibility. I mean, this is kind of like war casualties in a way. Or sometimes we just have to let people deal with the consequences of their choices and their actions. If people are going to continue to support leaders who are supporting things that are going to hurt them, they may have to deal with some of the consequences of what those leaders are implementing before they're ready to learn what's actually going on and to stop being in denial. And this is a hard thing to watch, but as I try to let the people know that follow my work, that work with this work that I do, that, sometimes we just have to step out of the way. We have to let people learn their lessons and stop interfering because they'll get to those lessons a lot quicker if we get out of the way from them. Soul energy, and this is always interesting because I think this is so important. This is our heart energy. This is what we're feeling. This is what's going on deep within us, and whether we're nourishing that divine presence or not in the world. From the 1st through the 6th, so basically the first week of the month, this is a big focus for divine service, which is great if we're taking a break, maybe helping some people who can't help themselves, helping those that are in true need. This could be a focus. Again, we could see a break from certain bigger things to implement or to sign a bill or whatever on things that will help people who are in need, beneficial coming around. This is a time that's really going to require humbleness and releasing greed and excuses. So we want to pay attention. Who is humbling themselves? Who is saying, you know what, this wasn't the best choice. So we're going to take this other direction, or now we're going to do this. We're seeing that this isn't providing maybe some of the results that we would like to provide. And so we think that we can do better than this. We think that we can help people more than this. It's not reaching the people that we had hoped. So we're going to take these other steps to get in and help the people that need it. And we want to pay attention to those who are just making excuses for everything. We have to get to a point where we appreciate what we have. And this is what happens. When you have people, for example, that are legitimately on, say, a SNAP program or a disability program or retirement or whatever it is, you will find they genuinely appreciate what they're getting when they're truly in need. But the people who are getting a free ride and they're just being handed all kinds of stuff, they don't tend to appreciate what they're getting because they're coming from this greed. They're coming to all these excuses. Oh, I've been deprived all my life, so I've got an excuse to steal from other people. No, you don't. No, you don't. I'm sorry your life has been hard. My life has been very hard, but that doesn't give me an excuse to take from other people. If I want people to help me, I need to be kind to people. I need to treat them with respect. I don't have to follow all of their orders and things, but I need to treat them with respect. I need to value them, and I need to value myself in that process. We need to look at natural processes and divine wisdom. And this is really, really important because this is where our answers actually lie. This is where the answers reside. I shouldn't say lie. I use that word, but it's really reside. And we've got to have patience and we've got to have stillness for the beauty to come up and emerge. And we have to have that patience to stop and connect. Well, how does nature deal with this type of thing? How does nature handle this? And then we want to start looking at that because that's going to help us see what we need to do. We have to just be able to translate it into the things that are happening in our world and what we're doing. We need to focus on quality and integrity and follow through on our promises. So we're really going to see at this time who's following through, who is working with quality and integrity. Again, it's not just about doing something. Sometimes it's about doing something with a certain quality level. And there's reasons behind that. It's not just about being extravagant or spending a lot of money or doing something in a fancy way. There can be all different kinds of layers of how that creates respect from people, how that creates a certain ability to have an impact in non-tangible ways. And so there's a lot of different components with that. But we need to start to implement nature's rhythms into things because that's where real success is going to reside. Nature is designed beautifully and perfectly if we will honor its rhythms and its cycles. And again, I think some of that comes back to more people looking at how can I experience life more? How can I have more fulfillment in life? Well, guess what? It's not through work. It's not through status. It's not through living in a certain neighborhood. It's through the experiences I'm having. It's through the connections I'm having. It's through time with family. It's through being able to stop and watch a sunrise or a sunset or those types of things. And this follow through is absolutely huge right now if we're going to have successes. We've got to care about people, we've got to care about animals, and we've got to care about the planet or Earth or the environment. Um, and we do that when we're giving spirit, when we're giving love, when we're giving kindness in hardships. So we really want to look at who's going to be giving kindness out in hardships. And I think, again, this is like that kind of perfect break between the intensity that we talked about in some of the other parts with the first couple of days of the month. It may not seem like a lot's happening, but there are. And I think this is the direction that the heart is calling for. People are realizing we can't just implement A, B, C, and D. We've got to have some humanitarian components involved in things. The 7th through the end of the month in the soul space, the heart space, this is a big drive to make peace with our past, with ourselves, and with others during this time. So this is really important. So this is where it gets really kind of muddy sometimes because sometimes we have those war pieces that come out. Again, sometimes you have to position military stances in places in order to achieve peace. It seems kind of mentally counterproductive, but a lot of times this is what happens in there. So we need to make peace. We need to clear the karma of the past. We need to let the past be in the past, let it become history, let it become wisdom for us to learn from, and we've got to move forward. And what is said and done is going to be remembered for a really long time. So those who are truly working for peace, they're going to be remembered by that. Those people who are really working for war are going to be remembered for that. So whatever we're talking about, whatever we're doing is what's going to be sticking in people's minds. And this is what people are going to, it's kind of like what is going to become part of the legacy of the leaders that we have in our world or high profile people. Um, we can forgive the past if the changes have been made and we are choosing wiser now. So, yeah, there are going to be people that are going to change course. You know, if they've made changes, as I was mentioning earlier, we all do some pretty stupid stuff when we're young and make some really bad choices that we certainly wouldn't make as we've gotten older and wiser, so to say, in life. And we need to look at that. We can't just hold people to something that they did decades ago. We need to look at it and say, but what changes have you made? How are you different now? Um, how have you changed? What have you learned from that? And that's going to be the components, and we need to take that into consideration with people. And here again, this is where some people may say, why is this person getting off so easy? Well, they may have made some changes that we're just not acknowledging. And if they have made those changes, then they deserve to have a second chance. If they screwed up and they can admit that they screwed up and they've made the changes and they're putting in the effort, then yeah, give them a second chance. Maybe we can do that. So we have to weigh all of these pieces out. There's always a lot to consider. We learn from good and rough past, and we need to use that wisdom to move forward favorably. This is why we don't want to just wipe out things that we don't like in history, because it's the good things and the challenging things that teach us. We need both. They both have pros and cons in them. You know, whatever the results are, whatever the path is, they both have pros and cons, and we learn from that. And that is going to help us to move forward favorably. If we only get one side of the story and we're trying to wipe out history and for one side or the other, then we'll never move forward in a favorable direction. This is why a lot of these criminal syndicates, these corruption networks, this is part of why they want to wipe out the past, because they don't want people to remember it. They don't want people to see the things that are happening. They don't want people to learn, because when people learn, they're not as controllable. Simple as that. We need to use the foresight and consider the consequences of our choices and the impact on future generations. So, again, this is another reason for some of those delays to come in at times, for things to maybe not move forward as quickly or as fast as we would like them to, because we really have to stop and consider not just what works now, what is going to support our future generations? What is going to make those future generations strong? What is going to give them the opportunity to carry things through and to not get taken in again, to not fall prey to these things again? And we have to consider that. So choices become very, very important, and they have to have this soul component to them. It's not about just this moment. It's about what all these things that have happened in history, all the people that gave their lives for certain things, but also all of those lives that are yet to come, and all of those lives that are going to be carrying this world forward. And we need them to be able to be as strong as possible, as wise as possible. We need them, we need to make the choices that are going to support them to continue to move forward in favorable directions. So there you go. That's all the big stuff. That's March. That's March with what is happening around our world, the types of world events we can expect to happen, the types of things we can expect to be dealing with in that more geopolitical arena of things. And I certainly hope that this helps you. Again, jump over to my website, compassioncodes.com. Pick up your copy of the Code Journey so you can always be on top of what is happening, what is going down in the world. And again, this is not just about political events, it's about personal growth, it's about awareness, it's about your own personal journey, and it is a daily guidebook. And I am busy working away on the 2027 edition. The writing is underway for it. It's going to come out in a whole new format, basically the same information, but a new format, making it more accessible to people, more accessible to a wider audience. And I think it's going to be a wonderful way to work with the information when that comes out. So I look forward to it. But in the meantime, pick up your own copy. It's available in ebook and paperback versions of it. And you can check out more of my work over there. And feel free to like, subscribe to the channel, share the video out, make some comments if you have something that you want to say. And, just hang in there. Hang in there. There's so much more. Don't let yourself get too absorbed by the world and the world happenings. Be aware, but don't be consumed by it. Make sure you live your life. Take care, everybody.